See, you only had Rip on once. I've got to do a show with him every week. So
Oh, I feel for you, man. I bet your vocabulary's expanded.
he's getting better. I mean, it's been worse the last couple weeks, but
For the open book here. And ask 100 times, but I'll give you guys the real answer.
okay, that's great. That's how we'll start this show. We're gonna
Make sure he's got his teeth in.
that Coach Brisco is gonna give us the real answers, Rip, today, the real truth, nothing but the truth.
So help you God.
That's right.
That's it, brother.
Nothing but honesty with Coach Brisco today.
Honest engine, as they say.
We'll swear on Leroy McGirk's Bible.
Yeah. Damn it, Dorothy.
This will be the greatest. This will be the greatest show in many, many months.
That's awesome. How's your show going so far? You and
That's
JBL,
going good.
you guys?
We did it. We were having fun. Who did we do yesterday? I can't even remember. Oh, we did. Who the fuck was it yesterday? Oh, we did Reverend Slick, man. What a good interview he was.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, we did Dan Fry a couple of weeks ago, and he was awesome too.
So you guys are still having fun with that then, I take it?
Yeah, we're having fun. We're not making any money, but we're having fun doing it. That's what counts, I guess.
You should be making maybe a tad bit of money. No money, a little bit of money. Maybe just
a little bit, but
me and Rip would probably think we were rich if
we're not making Rip Rogers money, in other words.
Well, I come over here and I got Coke, Dr. Pepper out, all this different food because I can't afford to eat. So
well, hell, I got damn water because I had a generic damn water too, man. It ain't that Evian or any of that stuff.
Yeah, but I'll take them waters and take the empty things, and I'd run spot shows and go in the toilet and fill them back up and sell them again.
There you go.
What the hell, right?
Yeah, him and my dad did that. I remember at the National Guard Armory. The King was doing that too, right?
Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome.
That's awesome, baby.
Go redo the waters.
Yeah.
Doesn't get any better than that. So yeah, we had the one
man
gang.
When it's hot, it don't matter as long as it's cold.
Yeah, we had the one man gang on about a month or so ago. So he was talking about Slick a little bit on our show.
Oh, cool. I'd like to get his number. I hadn't had him on our show. Like I said, we had Slick on, so of course we talked about him a lot last night, and I just didn't have his contact. You know, when you start these shows, you just go through your contact list first, and get the guys on that you respect, and give you a good show. And so, I'd never had him on my contact list. So after talking to Slick yesterday, Slick said he'd get it to me, but man, he's so busy doing that preaching. I'm happy for him. He's happy, and he's got a good church down in Louisville. Probably where are you guys at? You're up in Indiana, right?
Yeah, we're in Indianapolis.
Indianapolis.
Yeah. So he's down there in Louisville. He got a church down there. He splits his time between there and his home in Texas.
Oh, that's cool.
But it was
Coach,
fun.
I don't know if it's just my screen or not, but is there any way you could just adjust your camera just a little bit?
There sure is. John gave me shit all night last night because I kept playing. My dad didn't like the way it was looking there. As we were doing it, the storm was coming in, so damn the window, the light kept changing. So how's that? Is that better?
Yeah, just
I got a tendency to move around a little bit. So
that's fine.
I like to bob and weave.
When you're
I'm ducking all the Rip's punches.
when you're leaning back and getting real comfortable, then your head disappears. So
okay. Well, that's not a bad thing.
Oh, we want to see you here. So I guess we could get kind of started a little bit from the beginning. I mean, you've had obviously a very, very long career, so we don't have to go through every single thing from start to finish, but obviously you were an amateur wrestler first. Was professional wrestling in your vision at the time you were doing all the amateur style wrestling?
Well, it certainly was. I grew up there in a little town called Blackwell, Oklahoma. I was actually born in a place. Jack and I were born in Bowlegs, Oklahoma, down in southeastern Oklahoma, or southwestern Oklahoma. I'll get it right there. On Chickasaw allotment land, where our family was on the Trail of Tears and marched us all out to Oklahoma and gave us that land out there, and wanted to settle out there, and then we did. And then after a few years, my mom and dad, of course, got married and had 6 kids, and my dad got that Okie fever and got on a damn bus and went out to California and then eventually sent for the family out there. We got out there about 2 weeks, and my mom didn't like California, being away from her family. So he put us on a bus and shipped us all back to Oklahoma. So divorced my mom and left my mom a single parent with 6 kids to raise. She did a heck of a job. My oldest brother Gene was a star athlete. He was a basketball player of all things, and got scholarships. And then that athletic ability just kind of got passed down. And Jack was probably the most athletic one of the bunch of us there, and then probably me. But I started wrestling there in Oklahoma, in Blackwell, Oklahoma, when I was about 6 years old. Right down the road is a little place called Perry, Oklahoma. Any wrestling fan knows where Perry, Oklahoma is. It's the home of the great Danny Hodge. So Danny, as when you're amateur wrestler, that's a real tight community, as Rip can tell you. So Danny would come over and work out with the Blackwell group, and the Blackwell better guys would go work out with the Perry group. And then Danny got on TV as a professional wrestler. I'd already come in contact with him when I was about 5, 6 years old, so I knew who Danny Hodge was right off the bat. And of course, he was my hero. He was my idol. My brother Jack had bigger aspirations. Lou Thez was his idol, and so Jack wanted to be world heavyweight champion, and I wanted to be world junior heavyweight champion. I wanted to beat Danny Hodge for the world junior heavyweight title.
Now,
I got that title, but I never did beat Danny. Go ahead, Rip. I'm sorry.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but Danny Hodge, I think he was the first amateur wrestler, ever to be on the cover of Sports Illustrated.
That's exactly right, and I got that magazine around here
Wow.
somewhere with Danny's signature on it, which that's one of my proudest memorabilia things. And he was the first and only amateur wrestler ever to grace the cover of it. Do you think back, man? The Dag Gables, the Cale Sandersons, all these great amateurs that's been on the cover. A few years back, there was a one-legged guy from Arizona, Anthony Robles, who won a national championship. I was thinking, man, this is going to break Danny's Hodge's record of being the only guy on there. Because what a better story. This guy born one leg, and then he goes on and wins the highest honor in amateur wrestling, one of the toughest sports around. But Anthony didn't make it. Something big happened in the world of sports, and Danny Robles got pushed off the cover, which he was scheduled to be on the cover, but he got pushed off of it because whatever happened. And so Danny still remains the only guy ever on Sports Illustrated cover. Could
you explain the strength of Danny Hodge with like the plier or the pliers?
Yeah. I'm fortunate enough. I got to witness several feats of strength, as we call them there, by Danny Hodge. And of course, the apples, that was an everyday deal that Danny did that just to make guys laugh, and put the little fear of God in them if he had to compete with them. But I got to travel with Danny, being an amateur wrestler, and him being, I got to drive him around. Of course, my car, when I started the business, as most of us, we all had old beat up cars. Danny had been champion for a while, so he had one of those big Cadillacs. So, hey kid, you want to drive me? So I, of course, Mr. Hodge, I want to drive you. I get to drive that new Cadillac around with Danny Hodge and the seat there. Danny had all these pull. You don't Rip, back in the old days, with no interstate, so you got to really see the countryside. I mean, you really, those old highways. And so we go down to Arkansas from Tulsa, travel those back roads, and when you travel on those back roads, you got all those little communities you go through. Each one of those communities, Danny had a pie shop, he had a coffee shop, he had just a place where you go in bullshit shop. He had all these places, people knew Danny, of course, and Danny would stop at BS. Well, what kind of person Danny had, Rip. I mean, he was a really personable guy, really likable guy. So one time, the Plower, get to the Plower story first, but that was your question. So these new Pliers come titanium steel or whatever they're supposed to be, the unbreakable steel. Nobody can break these Pliers. So we go into this hardware store on one of these little roads that we're traveling on, going down to Arkansas or wherever the hell we go. Maybe it's I don't know. But Daddy pulls over one of these hardware stores. He said, hey kid, watch this. I've been wanting to try this. Now they'd never done it before. They, like I said, these titanium steel belt pliers had just come out. So we walk in. He said, "Hey, you got any of those new pliers I've been seeing on TV?" Yes, sir, we sure do. He said, "Could I see a couple of them just to test their strength?" Yes, sir, you sure can. They're unbreakable. Nothing can break these things. They're PSI, all that BS. It's impossible to break these things. Danny reaches in the box. Are you talking about these here? And the guy said, "Yes, sir." Danny just proceeds to crunch down on snap. The guy, well, it must have been a default and it must have been cracked. And he had Danny another pair. So Danny breaks that. And now Danny, yeah, well, that must have been a defect too. He said, "I thought these things were unbreakable." Well, they are, sir. I've never seen or heard anybody break it. And then the guys, about this time, there's a crowd starting to get him. When, Danny with a crowd, man, he said, he. And now he's really going to put on a show. He takes them and puts them in both hands. And he said, "Okay, here we go." Boom. He breaks 2 more pairs. And all, these are expensive. All of a sudden, the guy gets the box, picks the box, and Mr. Hodge, "I'm sorry, we have no more." He went through his own damn inventory of these unbreakable. So from then on, we couldn't stop in that story anymore. But yeah, then these steel belt radios come out. That's how old we are. Then steel belt radios first come out. They're talking about how strong they are. I see Danny walk over. We stop to get gas somewhere. Hey, these new steel belts. Yes, sir. They're really good. The best tires. They're, you can't wear them damn things out. Blah blah blah. Danny takes one up and he starts playing it like an accordion, pressing that thing back and forth. That guy's just flipping it. Hodge had that remarkable strength that's legendary, of course. And one thing about working with him, and Rip can tell you this too. Danny would have those flashbacks. Sometimes you get out and say, "Oh, I was an Oklahoma State guy and he was an OU guy," so we had that natural rivalry going all the time. So Danny would get out in that ring and, the people were going to start getting with him. And you could just feel Hodge's body start to tense up. Man, that was scary as hell, right, Rip? I mean, it was just scary as hell. And you're trying to do something. Danny's like a damn brick out there. Yeah, hey, Tiger, it's a work. We're not in Gallagher Hall. Gallagher Hall is what, of course, we're Oklahoma State University wrestle. You'd have to bring it back to reality sometimes, especially if you were doing those flurries, man. He didn't want anybody outside it. He gave me some of the best advice I ever had when I was a kid. And you'll remember the name, the Jerry the Barber Miller. You remember that guy, Rip? It might have been before your time.
I think it was before my time. Or I was on. This is when I had only little gimmick stations where you couldn't hardly get anything. I had to adjust the rabbit ears or whatever. It was grainy and stuff like that. So I didn't get to see much TV.
Well, I know somebody that you don't know. That's amazing. But Jerry the Barber Miller, he was one of these old timers. He didn't. And Leroy McGirk, the great promoter there in Oklahoma, was a blind man. He did color commentary on his TV as a blind man.
We were talking about today.
Yes, that's what I was talking earlier.
You guys were talking about that today. Amazing.
No, I was talking about Leroy, the blind promoter, the car wreck, and how he got this and that.
Yeah. He could actually call a match by hearing the ring sounds. Mm-hmm. And he's giving him a slam. How the hell does he know that? But he had been around so much and he studied so much. He could hear, he could distinguish the sound of a body slam on the ring. So a guy would get body slam and he body slammed the guy. The guy was an amazing guy. But anyway, Leroy is one to start this. He was Oklahoma State Cowboy too. He started both my brother and I and Danny Hodge and Dale Lewis, a lot of those old Oklahoma guys there. But where was I going with this story, Rip?
I have no idea. I'm just sitting back and enjoying the ride.
Oh, Danny, the advice that Danny Hodge gave me.
The pliers and everything. The vice grip.
I'm getting ready. I'm getting ready to win my very first title I've ever won. It was a Texarkana championship.
Shit, that's the hottest belt around.
Yeah, it was the hottest damn belt, my first one, man. So I was going to work with Jerry the Barber Miller, and Hodge came up to me, and Miller was one of these old timers. He didn't really like these kids coming along. Here I was a hippie kid, coming right out of school, man. I had the long hair, I wore the bell bottoms. I was a child of the '60s. So what the hell,
Yeah.
So I'm all duded up. Daddy comes over to me and he said, congratulations, you're getting a title. He said, let me tell you something. He said, you better watch Jerry out there. He doesn't like young kids, and he don't like kids that can wrestle. He said he might try to out wrestle. He said, I'm gonna tell you something I was told a long time ago by Ed the Strangler Lewis. Now I'm getting information that Ed the Strangler Lewis had passed on to Danny Hodge. Now Danny Hodge is passing on to me, and I pass it on to several other kids that were wrestlers. Daddy said, you're a wrestler. You're a college wrestler. He said, that's your gimmick. You don't need a gimmick because you're a wrestler. And let all these other guys have it, like Jerry the Barber. He's a barber because he can't wrestle. You're a wrestler. He said, never let these guys out wrestle you, Brisco. If you do, you lose your gimmick. Once you lose your gimmick, you got nothing. And so, here I am. And he said, he's not happy about putting you over tonight, so he might try you out there. First time I've ever been tried in my life. I really didn't know what that meant, And so I found out real quick what it meant when I went out to the ring. I couldn't get nothing. All of a sudden, I look out towards the back, and I see Danny Hodge peeking through those damn curtains. Just at the time Miller's trying to block me on something. Man, I shot a double leg on him. I shot that Jordan Burroughs double leg on him. Perfect, man. Nobody's going to stop that, Dave. Not even the great Danny Hodge. Took his ass down and started riding him, and I could hear him grunting and groaning pretty soon. I said, Jerry, I said, we can continue doing it like this, or we can work. Whichever one you want to do. I want to work, kid. I want to work, kid. So that was my first taste of somebody challenged me and tempted me out in the ring with Jerry the Barber Miller. And I appreciate him for doing it, to tell you the truth, because it taught me a lesson.
That's awesome. So were you actually, I was gone for just a minute. I had somebody at the door. Were you actually trained as a pro wrestler, or did you just get in and start doing it then?
I didn't have a Rip Rogers man around to teach me, go to these damn schools or anything like that. Jack pushed back the furniture in his dining room and started showing me during spring break. I'd go on road trip with him. He said, let me show you something. So I started learning like that. And during the summertime, Leroy gave me a job of setting up the ring. So, as Rip knows, Leroy ran a lot of those old carnival spot shows, fair shows and everything. So you'd have to go early, set up the ring. And more times than not, some of the old timers would be there early because they wanted to go around the fair for free and get free treats and all that stuff. So they come up, Brisco, we know you wrestle in college. Would you show us how to do this? And we'll show you a little bit about pro wrestling. So it was kind of a cultural exchange. I'd show them a little bit of my style wrestling. They'd show me some of the working stuff. So by the time I got ready, I'd never had a match. But anyway, spring break happened 1969. I go over and I want to travel a week with my brother to see these pro wrestling matches. We head up to Joplin, Missouri. My brother's partner was Gorgeous George Jr. And George, the night before, got his ankle broke by Danny Hodge. Danny put an ankle lock on him a little too stiff. And didn't break it, but twisted enough where it swelled up and he couldn't work the next night. And so our tag team against, I think it was Buddy Coe, who was Ronnie Reed at the time, and Danny Jack Donovan with Vern Bottoms, his wife, as their manager. So Buddy Cote looked at me and he said, Buddy was one of those guys who would always exchange knowledge with me on these spot shows too. Buddy was a great guy. Buddy's one of my all-time heroes, man. One of the guys that I think is probably one of the most overlooked heels in the entire field of professional wrestling. What do you think about that, Rip? I mean,
well, when I was working for Championship Wrestling from Florida in 1985, he was doing the color. I can't remember if it was with him and Coach Heath or him and Gordon, whatever it was. But he was like the old heel who had been there for years, but now he's an announcer, so he's Babyface. He's the guy with the stories. He was the guys with the knowledge. He's the guy that had all the boys' respect.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
And I wasn't from that area, and all I knew from him was like the Brisco brothers when I was growing up was the wrestling magazines. And I got every wrestling magazine you could get in Seymour, Indiana at the pipe shop. Once a month they'd come in. There were probably 6 or 7 of them, and I'd get them all at one time when they wasn't throwing me out for just reading them for free anyway.
Well, I had a sister who worked at the local drugstore, so when the wrestling magazine would come in, she would call me before they hit the stand.
Uh-huh.
So I'd get to go down there and go through all of them, and I'd stand there and look at them so long. Pretty soon, the owner of the drugstore would come over and said, "Gerald, you got to leave. I'm going to put these on the stand, either buy them or put them back on the rack." There, Coach, I put them back on the rack. But anyway, make that story. We're wrestling. Jack is wrestling against Danny Jack Donovan. Did you know him any along the road?
Just by the name. I didn't
Well, see, I'm bringing up all these names. You told me to bring up some of these old. You don't even know who the hell I'm talking about.
Well, I know the name, but
I can't believe I'm older and you know more damn these old timers than you do.
No, I think it's awesome to hear somebody bring up names that Rip doesn't know, because Rip knows every single name that everybody ever mentions on our show. So I think this is great.
No, I'm like
you can start a segment. Stop Rip. Rip.
I'm like a little.
So you're about what, 7 years younger than?
I'm like a little kid in a candy store, and I'm looking at one of my heroes, and I'm watching these guys. It'd be like Mickey Mantle watching Babe Ruth or something like that. But Mickey Mantle goes back to his childhood when he was idolizing these guys. That's like I remember, Coach, I told the story about you in Fat Jerry Alexander's government class in Seymour. I was reading the story about you and your brother. And Fat Jerry, he told my magazine, and in front of the class said, "Oh, you're reading a story about the Brisco brothers." I said, and I said, I didn't know what kayfabe was. I said, Brisco, But then I hedge appled his ass. I got him. So
you got him. All right.
Yeah.
So I'm getting you, and I'm loving it. So anyway, they asked me if I wanted to work, and asked Jack, of course, if it's okay. Well, he's still in college. Well, hell, we won't even use his name, but everybody there knew who I was, because I favored Jack, of course, he's my brother. So anyway, I borrowed an extra pair of boots from somebody or somebody had just finished a match, and Jack had an extra pair of ties. So I put them on, and back in those days, if you were in a tag team match, and Rip I hope he can back this up, but back in those days, the cards weren't real big. So if you were in a tag team match, you usually had to work what they call a warm-up match.
The captain's match, a singles.
Yeah, a singles match. You
Right.
go out for 15, 20 minutes, whatever time they needed, and then go out. So a buddy Cope volunteered, I'll take him out in a warm-up match, and I'll see if he can do a tag match. And so I said, okay. And he said, Dewey, don't do anything unless I tell you to do. Don't revert back to the Hodge days, the shooting days, and just listen to what I say and do exactly what and I'm going to keep it basic and stuff that we did in this singles bash here, and we'll get our 15 minutes in, and then we'll come back and plan the tag match, but don't do anything. I said, yes, sir. So I went out there. And man, I was scared shitless, man. I was so scared. Here I am, my first time, and I'm not even, like you said, I'm not even trained. I learned a wrist lock in the locker room, or probably in Jack's dining room. I don't know where it was, but I went out and had my first match, and man, that 15 minutes, it seemed like it took 45 minutes to an hour and a half to get through. But we got through it, with nobody getting hurt or anything. So I'm feeling real good about myself. So now we have a 2 out of 3. Fall match, for whatever it was, just put in time for probably Hodge and whoever he was working at, Nikita Khrushchev or whatever the hell those guys' names were. But anyway, we go out and a regular tag team match. We get through the first 2 falls. Now I'm starting to feel a little, frisky and everything. Man, it's coming pretty damn easy to me. I can wrestle, so. All they had me doing was take down and grabbing a headlock and an arm bar and stuff like this, simple stuff. I wasn't allowed to kick or punch or anything like that because they were afraid of me. So finally, Jack gives me a comeback. I don't know why Jack gave me a comeback. When he come back, well, hell, I see I'm a TV guy. I'm watching TV all the time. So hell, I just start throwing punches. I back Buddy Colt up against the ring. I rear back. And Jack and I are both left-handed. And he didn't know at that time I was left-handed. I rear back, and I gave Buddy a damn hit. Man, he turned his face right into my left hand, and man, I nailed him in the ear, and immediately that ear started swelling. God damn! I told you not to punch me. I told you not to punch me, man. I got back and the match was great, they said, but man, I had heat for it. They would not let me kick or punch for 6 months after that until I learned how to throw a punch. And that was my first lesson on how to throw a punch. I got back in the locker room, and Buddy stood there and made me punch the mirror in the dressing room about 60 times before he let me. This is right after the match, and I blowed up like crazy because I'm not in that kind of shape, you know. And so he made me punch that damn mirror 50, 60 times, and my hand was basically bleeding. He said, when you can punch it 50 times and your hand's not bleeding, then you're ready to punch. He said, you're not allowed to punch until you do that. So that was my lesson on learning how to punch there right off the bat there.
That's awesome. Do you have any Danny Hodge stories, Rip? Were you ever around him at all?
No, no. I was just always amazed with the Danny Hodge stories.
What was your favorite story? And I can kind of verify it because I know that I traveled with Danny day and night there, and I mean Danny got me in trouble a few times doing things that I shouldn't have been doing, and Danny was like that. And Danny just that he I told you, And,
well, if you're one of the boys, you're one of the boys, right?
Tell us some of those you got in trouble stories with it.
Yeah, that's I want to
hear. I can't. I wish I could, but I can't on that.
Well, you can clean them up a little. You can clean them up a little
bit.
We
can always edit it.
Yeah, we can edit that. Yeah.
Well, it was in Louisiana, and it was involving a young lady.
Imagine that. Well, it's better than involving a young man, right? So
yeah,
what the hell?
Exactly.
So this is great to begin with.
And it was one of those kayfabe ladies that you couldn't let anybody know you were with, and so one night I'm sitting in a bar and Opelousas, Louisiana. Danny comes up to me and, hey, you want to meet one of the girls tonight, Tiger? And I said, Danny, I'd love to. I'm a young guy, been on the road. He said, okay, but you can't tell anybody about it. I said, okay. When they come in, he said, well, this is the deal. And when he said this is the deal, I kind of knew something shady going on. They're going to park their car about a block or two from the hotel. We're going to get in my car. We're going to circle the hotel. They're going to see us. And then they're going to follow us, and then they're going to take us to one of their secret places. Now I'm thinking, well, because I'd heard about the old Mabel ribs,
Oh yeah, okay.
And I'm starting to think, well, am I being mobiled here or what? And I said, well, Danny Hodge is with me, surely. I mean, I love Danny, and he loves me. Surely I'm not going to get Mabel there. So, do you know what a Mabel is?
Yeah, we talked about it last week, or did we actually put it on the show? Talking about it,
you did, but I can't remember what it was. I wasn't familiar with it, I don't think, at the time. But we did talk about it, but I can't remember.
So anyway, I think I'm getting Mabel. So we all of a sudden the girls go by us there, and it's dark. Of course, I can't see inside the car, So they get in front of us. We follow them out to this little secluded lakeside area out there, and so Danny says, I'm going to go up there and get them, and I'm going to send one of them back to you. And I'm thinking, oh, yeah, here it comes. So, man, all of a sudden, out of the car popped this beautiful young lady. I mean, built like you want them built. She comes to get in the car with me, and I can't do what I need to do because I'm worried, I'm going to get ribbed here somewhere down the line. And finally, she relaxes me. We go at it. Nothing happens. There's no Mabel to the story there. And so we get finished with our business there, and Danny comes back to, hey, Tiger, you finished here? Time to go back to the hotel. Oh, I'm finished, Danny. I think the young lady, and she gets out. She goes up and getting her friend's car. Danny goes, what do you think, kid? I said, Danny, it's great, man. It was so much fun. And he said, you can't tell anybody ever about this story. Ever. You got to promise you can't tell anybody ever about this story. So we're in redneck territory, and I'm going to let your imagination. And it's somebody that still I just can't finish the story, but I can finish it all there.
Come on, nobody watches this show.
I'll put it this way: if any of those white rednecks would have known what we were doing and who we were doing it with, we probably would have been shot that night. Okay. Let the imagination run away with you. That was my first experience at that.
But it was a female.
It was a female. It definitely was a female.
And like the one story Rip told once. I can't remember who that was.
Oh, it was a story about me and Gary Albright when he come into Puerto Rico. He come into Puerto Rico. I said, let's go downtown. He says, okay. So we go downtown, and then I said, hey, there's Mikey over there. Let's bring Mikey in. Mikey comes over, and Gary, I get him drunk on some kind of whiskey, whatever. He was just like drinking a whole bunch of it, and I wasn't a drinker. So to make a long story short, Mikey come in with Gary and satisfied him, whatever, blah blah blah. Then we left, and I said, I didn't know you liked men. He goes, what? I said, Mikey, that he was a guy.
Oh no.
He goes, no fucking way. I said, oh yeah, I thought you knew. You could tell by his body language, whatever, this and that. He goes, take me back there. I said, oh boy, this is going to get good, right? So we go back. Now Gary's drinking more. So all of a sudden, I said, Mikey, come here. Gary gets roll the window down, and Mikey's smiling right there. Hey, and I said, and Gary goes, wow. I said, well, he goes, well, I come, what the hell?
Oh God.
So I couldn't even get him. So Gary wouldn't put it over.
Gary's one guy I always wanted to be friends with. I met him one time in Japan, and that was the only time I ever got to meet Gary. But I mean, he was quite a few years after me, and he was one of those guys, with his reputation like it was. The one guy that I really wanted to meet and become friends with for a long time. He was that opportunity.
He was so cool. And I met him in Calgary. You know how the amateurs would float out there, but then they wouldn't get used.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I didn't see him for a while. Then when I saw him, I said, damn, you're pretty good now. He said, well, I finally got to get some work, but with Stu and Bruce, they just, they had him hanging around and stuff. And
why were they like that out there? I mean, you figure Stu, with his background, he'd want a feature of those guys like that.
Well,
I'd always heard that. That's one of the reasons why I stayed away from there.
Well, I think I had more fun there than any place I ever had in my life.
Yeah.
The first night in, they dropped me at the hotel. There was 4 strip bars within a couple blocks. The gym, BJ's gym, the oldest daughter's husband was about 3 blocks away, where I could jump on the train for free and then go down there and jump off without having to pay. So that was great. That's when Davy Boy Smith was a little boy. Yeah. And
wow.
Teddy Hart was a little kid diving off the benches, swinging from the lights. Just, you knew he was going to be trouble. But Calgary was about the most funnest place, right next to the buffet. The women, wow. Jerry Moore will be picking me up in the van every day. Whippy, where we going tonight? Whippy, where we going tonight? So when I first come in, I was like low man on the totem pole. And I actually, what I was telling Vaughn before, talking about, I was accidentally in Bad News Browns, Alan Coadge's. I was in his seat in the heel van. I didn't know that. I quickly got the hell out of there and showed him as much respect as possible. And then when I did that, we was lifelong friends. So, and then I didn't see him again until 97, but we was just telling stories and stories and stories. But, that's just another day in the life of any pro wrestler on the road. It don't get any better than that.
I had something like that happen. I had something like that happen to me in Little Rock, Arkansas, or not Little Rock, Hot Springs, Arkansas. And Sputnik Monroe, another old timer, Al Lovelock, who was a great bolo, he was there, and Ronnie Etchison, one of those tough Tennessee guys, one of the toughest guys I ever run across in my life, man, and probably didn't know a wrist lock from a headlock, wrist watch. But anyway, he was one of those guys that just raw bone tough. You knew Ronnie,
yeah.
Right?
Uh-huh.
Bad son of a gun, right? I mean, badass. So we're in this hotel room up above their bus station there, because some guys had to catch a bus to Shreveport the next morning. So we're partying there, and all of a sudden these beautiful young ladies come in. At least I had that impression. They were beautiful young ladies. So, I'm like I said, I'm a young college boy. I'm just starting in the business. So my brother's there. Thankfully, Jack was there. So these ladies come in and they start getting real flirty. And of course, I'm a young guy, and they come right straight toward me, And so I'm getting into it, and I think Sputnik said, "Hey, why don't you go back to the bedroom back there? Couldn't embarrassing us here." So about the time I got up, Jack grabbed me by the back of my shirt and pulled me back down. "You don't want to go back there." And why? What do you mean I don't want to go back there? Of course, they were guys; they weren't girls. My brother saved me. But
imagine that.
That was Sputnik Monroe trying to break me in.
Oh God,
that's awesome. How much older was Jack than you?
5 years older than me.
5 years. Did you stay at Oklahoma State the whole time, or did you leave early?
No, I got out. My Oklahoma State days are something I really regret. I had no luck at all there. I mean, I was recruited. I was one of the top recruits coming in, and I had a great career in high school and blah blah blah. And got my scholarship offer and went to Oklahoma State. Freshman year, I was undefeated. Nobody could touch me. Nobody could stay on the mat with me. Sophomore year, I'm ready. I think I'm going to do it. And I'm kind of, I think I'm going to make the team at least anyway. And so I blow my knee out. I from a high school football injury. I blew my knee out, so I had to set out my entire first year, sophomore year. Next year, I come back as a redshirt sophomore, and I've got a year experience, but I missed that year of working out, which really throws you behind, especially at that level. High school level, no, but college level, these guys are so skilled anyway. So I know I got some catching up to do. So we're talking about a red shirt year. So they throw the damn red shirt year on me, so I'm ineligible. So next year comes along, I'm eligible. I'm a junior now. I got a whole year of experience. I mean, I'm starting to look pretty good. I'm starting to feel pretty good about myself. And I come down with infectious hepatitis. Not only could I not wrestle, but I had to drop out of school because it was that infectious type of hepatitis there that, you couldn't compete, because it was highly contagious and they didn't want to. So I'd lost my scholarship. So now I'm 3 years in school and I hadn't tasted that mat at all for 2 years. And so this is when I start making trips with my brother. And, that fever starts getting into you. You see Jack now, he's going from a 15-year-old old beat-up car to a brand-new car, and of course, like I told you earlier, my single mother, 6 kids, she struggled working 2 jobs, keeping. So, I'm starting to talk to Jack. I'm starting to get on the road, setting up the rings and all that stuff. Guys are starting to like, man. Starting to, hey, man, you've been hurt, you've been sick and all that stuff. When are you going to start making some money? So, I start checking into it. I'm almost got my degree there. And so I start looking for a job, coaching job. So I find this job over in a little town by Tulsa over there. And I signed $4,500 to teach and coach for a year. Hell, I'd worked that summer setting up the ring and had a couple of matches, and I made close to $5,000 during the summertime. So I started adding the two up together. Man, this don't make sense. I'm gonna work a whole damn year, and 8 weeks basically. I've made as much in 8 weeks as they're gonna pay me an entire year. So, I went home and I told my mom. I talked to Jack, of course, at first. Hey Jack, you think I can make it? And he said, well, you're gonna have to make it on your own because I want to be world heavyweight champion. And I'm not gonna have a tag. I'm not gonna go tag team. I want to go singles. I said, okay, So I go back and I tell my mom. Of course, my mom's dead set against it. I'm basically a year away from my degree because that year I lost where I had to drop out of college because of hepatitis. Threw me that far behind. So, man, I was broke. I didn't have nothing. My old car was broke down. And if you're in college, you don't have a car, those girls just don't want to look at you. I don't care what kind of athlete you are. And so I said, well, I'm going to make the move. So I go over to Tulsa, and Leroy gives me a job, immediately puts me in the ring. And like I said, I've just had maybe 2 matches under my belt, 2 or 3 matches under my belt. And so I started working, and fortunately, with Leroy there, but Leroy being blind, and Rip would probably testify this too. Leroy's memory he hired all these old timers. So I was the youngest there probably by 20 years, because Leroy remembered all these guys from when he could see and when he was healthy, and he didn't know they all got old like he did. The territory was loaded with a bunch of really, really old guys, is what I'm saying. But the old guys with great knowledge and great attitude about wanting to share their knowledge with somebody young, and they saw a little potential with. So I was blessed with guys that Wild Red McKim, Red Berry, some of those old masters of the ring that I got that knowledge from. And I was a college boy, so I was like a damn sponge. I would just bleed every night, sit in that dressing room, listen to the stories, and beg them to answer my questions, So that's basically how I got my start.
Wow, that's awesome. So then where did you go after that? You did go with your brother, though. You guys obviously tagged.
Well, we tagged a little bit there in Oklahoma before Jack finally went down to Dallas, and then when he went to Dallas, he eventually went to Florida. There, when he went to Florida, he'd already gone to Australia and Japan. Well, I got a trip to Japan, because of my brother, and went over there. And back in those days, they weren't these 3-day tours, man. They were 6-week tours. So you had to go over there, and I went over there. Somebody sent me a picture the other day after Terry Funk passed away, God rest his soul. And I just started, and I thought, man, I was a baby there, And so those Japanese boys, they knew I could shoot a little bit. So yeah, Ripple can testify that they want to test you. So I started getting tested every night. And I must have did okay because they asked me to come back, But I went there. After I finished that, I come back. Came down here to Florida for 6 weeks, kind of filling in. While I was down here, I got a call from Jim Barnett wanting to know if I wanted to go to Australia. I said, sure. I'd never been down there. So I got a deal to go down there. And they worked the first angle. Eddie Graham worked the first angle with me ever. And I'll show you how the kayfabe. I'll tell this quick story here about Eddie. And so they worked quick angle with me with Dale Lewis. Dale was a national champion from University of Oklahoma. Tough son, big old heavyweight guy. He had what he called a Lewis lock, and nobody had ever survived that Lewis lock. So he and Jack were getting ready to have a Florida championship title match. So those old angles that were fantastic. The plane's late, Jack's not here. Jack's not here. His plane is late in the title match. Of course, Dale Lewis goes down. Jack Brisco, you one of those damn Oklahoma State Cowboys. I went to a real school. I went to Oklahoma University. Started knocking my school. Started knocking my brother. And Eddie kind of looked at you're going to take it. You're going to run out and take up your brother's pride and your pride. You're not going to let this guy knock you like this. I said, okay. So we let Lewis get into a spiel and where he's just disparaged my name, my heritage, and my school and everything else. My brother. Finally, I had all I could say, and I run out and I'd start kicking that damn Dale Lewis's ass. Dale selling like a champ for me because nobody had ever taken the big guy off his feet and all that stuff. And he's flying around for me. Finally, he ends up that Lewis lock. And this is where a great announcer comes in. This is your lesson for the day. You can't do a lot of these angles without a great announcer. Who is our announcer? The greatest in the world, Gordon Soden. So Gordon already knows, about my Native American heritage, and he knows, the stuff about me. So when Lewis gets me in that, referees have to give up. Gordon, he's never going to get up. He's a Native American. He never get up. He got that Native fighting spirit in him. He got all this fighting spirit in him, blah, blah, blah. Of course, I never give up. He teared my arm out of my socket. About the time he's getting ready to send me to the hospital, here comes Jack running through with a suitcase in the hand, the airplane hand. He comes out and, of course, makes the save of his little brother, beats the hell out of Dale Lewis, and they go on to a big program. I'm walking around in a sling. About a week after that happened, there's these little twin girls that live right down the road. They're college girls that they were wrestling fans, and I met them at a Belch department store or something like that. So I'm romancing them. And I got my arm in a sling. They're feeling all sorry for me. I'm a TV guy, And so one day where it's hot here in Florida, and Stu Schwartz lives right down the road from where these girls live. Stu was one of our trusted referees here in Florida.
Right.
So the girls wanted their car washed, So I'm sitting there, I'm in my sling, it's a hot day, and they're in their little bikinis out there washing the car. So I'm going to jump in. So I take my sling off, and I'm washing that car. And now kayfabe is strict down here in Florida. About that time, Stu Schwartz drives by, And here I am washing these little twins' car without my arm in a sling. Well, of course, he's on his way to the office. He goes to the office. He runs into Eddie Graham. And I just saw Brisco there, and he's out of kayfabe, man. He got his arm out of the sling and all this. I mean, we had coverage on the local TV. Rep can tell you what kind of coverage Eddie had down there. I mean, it was mainstream. We were the only game in town. There were no pro sports franchises here in town. We're the only game in town. So I get a call that evening. Gerald, I need to see you at the office. And I go to the office. There's Eddie there, there's Jack there, and there's Stu there. Oh shit! What's happening? I know I'm in trouble. Eddie proceeded. He said, "Stu saw you without your sling on. You know the trouble that we go through and what we did for you to help enhance your career, and now you're just throwing it all down the drain. You're throwing your brother's career down the drain. What are you trying to do?" So I was finished up in Florida. Fortunately, I had Australia to go to. But I left Florida with my head down and between my ass there because I thought I was finished here in Florida.
Oh wow!
So that's how Eddie Graham was about kayfabe down here. I mean, if you broke it, man, you were in trouble, and you had to pay the piper for it. That's the reason the territory was so great.
That's a great story. I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about simple angles. How the brains you guys had to do the stuff that is so simple. It's like I worked with Dale Lewis when I was in Oregon in '79. We was running some 2 towns and I was on the B squad because the other guys was going somewhere else. And he was like national champion. He was the big shooter, so I was just scared to death. But I was so honored to be wrestling one of my heroes. And I'm the luckiest guy in the world. I'm getting to meet these guys. And I don't want to know what their habits are. You don't want to meet your heroes. Because we're all scumbags.
Exactly.
but no, we are.
We are. And I first admit that too,
But it's just great. And when I listen to these stories, I go back to being a teenager, probably 13, 14 years old, just dreaming of being a wrestler, going to the matches, of meeting these guys, of getting their autograph, getting a picture taken with them or whatever. And I just love these old stories. You see all these guys that you looked up to, all these guys that had made it in this business, all these guys that were superheroes to me, how they had the same. Well, they got in trouble too.
They was
hanging out with the rats too.
Right.
They got fired just like me. Well, hell, they didn't really get trained either. We all half-assed figured it out, and they were scared to punch people because it would either look phony or you'd kill somebody, and you didn't know what the hell to do. But I just sit back and then I appreciate anything I did, and it was never about the money with me. That's what a stupid person I was. I won't cuss or whatever, but just loving this wrestling business, everything it was. And the thing about Eddie Graham was Rip Rogers in Texas in 1955.
Right, exactly, yeah.
And I was named after him.
Really? I was going to ask you how did that happen?
I was going to go, and I worked for I was with the Freebirds with Nick Goulas. And they turned me on to Frankie Kane and George and Gil Calkin in Mississippi. So I come in and Frankie nicknamed me Rip Rogers. I said, well, why Rip Rogers? I said, I realize that if I'm Rogers, people think of Buddy Rogers, and I didn't understand Rub or anything, but I said, they will sort of think I'm maybe related to Buddy Rogers. He said, yeah, but Eddie Graham was the first Rip Rogers in Texas in 1955. That's who you remind me of right away. I said, well, that's pretty good.
That's
and
good,
he goes, yeah. I said, well, I ain't no Eddie Graham. And I said, I ain't tried to be no Eddie Graham, but thank you. So I've been Rip Rogers since 1979.
Wow, that's great. You were out in Oregon, and that's one of the places that I miss, that I always wanted to work. And I tell you, one of the reasons I wanted to work, I always heard about Elton Owen.
Holy Jesus Christ! We're gonna have a shoot tonight.
His shooting contest, and how they turned out to be a work after a while. But that had to be the funnest time. here's a promoter. Hey, guys, I got an extra 20 spot. Go out and shoot with each other. Take it. Whoever wins gets his extra $20 on payoff. How that? And then you guys were working the promoter. That's a great story.
Oh, it was so good. Now just think, when I'm there, Roddy Piper's there, Rick Martell's there, Ron Starr's there, Adrian Adon. I got to be partners with the great Playboy Buddy Rose. Dale Lewis was there. Johnny Mantle was there. Iceman King Parson was just starting. And this was before the cable TV. So we had Portland every Saturday night. So then you had a Portland special one. So you had Portland 5 times a month. You had Salem every week. You had Eugene every week. You had Roseburg, Medford every other week. You had Seattle every other Wednesday. So, and then we all stayed at the Bomber Hotel, which was great. It actually had a big airplane.
And how much was the Bomber Hotel a night?
No, it was $63 a week.
63. Wow.
Yeah. And of course, every night after the matches, all the rats would show up there. So it was just the greatest time. I'm single. If I wasn't single, I've been doing the same thing because I'm a no good bastard.
But what about the shoots?
With Elton. He says, okay, now I'm going to work with Elton. Elton goes, Rip, how about you and Matt Bourne having a shoot?
Wow.
And this is when Matt was like 19, just starting. There was Tough Tony, who had that huge head, the double cauliflower ear. Right. Me and Buddy go out. The gentleman, Tony Bourne, who was one of the lightest workers I ever been with in my life, unless he hit you with that gut punch and he knocked the shit out of you. But I was going to work with Matt, and Matt was a great amateur, but he was half mark.
Right.
So we finally went out there to work, and I said, Matt, let's do this, let's do that. And he had to beat me real fast. We could have got at least 3 shows out of him and could have got up to 100 to the winner, 50 the goddamn loser.
Wow.
But his ego took over. I said, Matt, that was too strong. I said, we could have strung this out, and then we could have got rematches later on. We could work an angle in the dressing room, start shoving, screaming at each other. And I'd say, oh, I want his ass for real. You know what I mean? And then he says, well, I messed that up, but what the hell, right?
Yeah.
But what a great time it was working out there in Oregon. It was just rats galore, baby.
But didn't you say one time he would pay for extra, like, moves or tap outs or submissions?
Here's the gimmick. It's like, okay, Gerald, here you are. You was on second. Here's your payoff, 5-0. But here's $10 for you. You took a hell of a bump. Here's an extra 5 for good attitude money. And here's an extra 4-0 because you guys went through in the shoot. But next week, we're having a rematch. And it's going to be winner gets 60, loser gets 30. So that would be a typical Elton payoff. But then I had to pass the test with Piper, where I had to drop my money, and Elton pick it up, and me grab a stack of money that was $100. I had to take $100 from Elton. The next day, he goes, Jesus Christ, did I overpay somebody? I was short 100 last night. So you had to pass your test. So such was life in Oregon. It don't get any better than that. It was arena rats everywhere. The cheap hotel. I hung with Buddy Rose. It didn't get better than that, and life was good then. Memories, baby.
I think it's great that you've heard those stories from like other people, I'm assuming too, besides Rip. So I think that's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, they're legendary stories. I mean, that's all part of our business there. And what makes our business so unique and so spectacular is these type of stories there. And I hope we never lose them. Unfortunately, when we all go, I mean, who's going to fill them shoes, as old George Jones would say.
So do you have any Barnett stories? Rip always has got the Barnett impersonation and some Barnett stories. Do you have any?
My boy. Good on you, my boy. Yeah, I spent a year in Australia with Jim Barnett. Then I was business partnered with him and learned. I got educated on a lot of business things that I didn't know existed there. But yeah, when I first went down to Australia, I was scared to death because I was Oklahoman, man. I thought I was going to fall off the face of the earth. I'm at the bottom of the world, man. At the bottom, I knew the globe, and I knew where Australia was. And I knew it was way down there, way down on the bottom of the damn earth. I thought I'd fall off the damn sky, but I flew down there, 15-hour drive flight, and that was part of the education. And when I flew from Oklahoma City to LA, got on this plane, next 13 hours, I'm going to be on this plane with a bunch of Italian immigrants. It was the greatest flight I've ever had in my life, and I wish I could go back to those days. But I'm on these Italian immigrants, and they got all their breads, they got all their sauces. About halfway into that flight, man, that aroma in the back of the plane, they started opening up their dishes. Man, the smells coming were just making you starve to death. Well, this one old Italian lady felt sorry for me. Young man, would you like something to eat? Oh man, I'd love it. So what a trip it was between their homemade wines and their local wines and all the food, man. What a trip I had there. But anyway, we landed in Sydney. Now I'm not a big guy. I'm barely pushing 200 pounds at that time, and I'm a baby face. I'm just a college boy. I still got the long hair. I had a suit on because that Mr. Barnett liked you dressing up. So I'm in a suit. That 15-hour flight, that suit must look great. I can just imagine how it looked now. And so I'm sitting there, and Jim Buddy, Lonnie May, not Lonnie May, but Lonnie, I can't remember Lonnie's last name. Lonnie's supposed to come and pick me up, take me from the Sydney airport, the international airport, over to the domestic airport and put me on a plane to Perth. Now, I just finished a 15-hour flight. Now I got to get off that plane, go over to the domestic terminal, and it's like Perth from Sydney's like going from Tampa to LA, six hours, another 6-hour flight. So I'm standing there, I'm waiting for Lonnie to pick me up, Nobody picks me up. All my Italian immigrant friends, all my mamas and all those people had left. So I'm standing there by myself. I'm scared to death. Here I am. I'm going down. We'll make all of $400 a week, man, which was gigantic money for me and anybody else back in those days. And this is steady for like 3 months. And so I'm waiting. Now there's nobody there to pick me up. And I know I got to catch this plane across the damn country. And so I get worried. So finally I find a phone and I'm called Jim Barnett. And he said, my boy, where are you? Lonnie's been out there and he couldn't see no wrestlers or anything, because like I said, I'm a little guy. There's a guy, those big Italian guys on the plane were bigger than me, but I was a small college boy. And so I said, well, Jim, I'm here at baggage claim. He said, Lonnie can't get back out there in time. Here's what you got to do. You got to get your bags. You got to run over to domestic. And he told me how to get over. And man, that was like a mile and a half. Here I carrying baggage. It lasted 3 months. I barely make my plane to Perth. And man, I'm thinking, man, what a way to start off your tour. The promoter main guy, don't even recognize you as a wrestler, and you're down here supposed to be a wrestler. I'm fearful for my job, my life, and everything. But I make the airplane. I'm down there, and I'm with Mark Lewin, Killer Curtis, Buddy Austin, the two German guys from Oregon, the Von Steiners, or what were their names?
Steigers.
Von Steigers, yeah. What great guys they were, man. They almost hooked me up to go to Oregon. Almost taught me to go there instead of Carolina. But I had a hell of a crew down there. Mario Milano, Dominic Danucci, some of the greatest, Killer Kowalski, some of the greatest workers in the world, who all those guys took me under their wing, taught me how to work out, taught me how to put some weight on, taught me the business in Australia, and they just adopted me like I was one of their own. And I'm forever thankful. I ended up, like I said, I signed for 3 months. I ended up spending 11 months there. And then my pay went from $400 to $900 a week. And
wow.
I didn't want to leave. It came time to leave. It was between Portland, San Francisco, and North Carolina. Well, Rip Hawk and Swede Hansen had come along, and I started working with them. And they loved me. And George Becker was getting ready to retire. And they said, we're going to need a top babyface in Carolina. If we get you booked there, will you come there? I said, I don't know. Jim's got me hooked up with San Francisco. And he said, well, it's a great place. But Pat Patterson's out there. Ray Stevens out there. There's a lot of competition. We can put you in a position where you'll be a top guy right off the bat there. And, of course, that appealed to me. So I told Jim I'm going to go to Carolina with Rip and Swede. So I finished up after almost a year in Australia and went straight into the Carolinas, and I'm glad I did.
Wow, that's awesome.
These stories are so great. And anybody we've had on here, they're all special. They're all different. And it feels like you can climb into that guy's wrestling boots and be them and experience it yourself. And you realize that everybody's story is not the same, but they are the same. There's all hardship. There's all suffering. You all have a 1 in a zillion chance to make it. And here these guys are, and they go everywhere. They meet people. They all got the same problems. And it's all, any wrestler story could be a movie.
And I hope they're storied about all those hardships you described, but also the friendship that you acquire along the way and the help. I mean, I could have never gone into Carolina without Rip Hawkins, Sweet Hands. I could have never done a lot of things without getting the confidence of other guys in the dressing room. And that's the most important part of, I think, all these stories is getting along with guys in the locker room, not only getting along with them, but getting their respect where they want to help you. And I was so fortunate. I don't know what it was, but it seemed like everywhere I went, I had guys that always above the upper rungs above me that wanted to take the time and help me achieve where I wanted to get. And that's what I bring out of our business is a friendship and a help. It's not a selfish business. If you have talent and somebody sees you, I don't care where they are on the card, they know somebody somewhere where they can help you out. And if you walk in and you give everybody total respect to that dressing room, you're going to start getting respect. And out of that respect you get, you're going to start getting help and direction and guidance on how to do things. And I was probably like Rip, that every time Luthez would walk in the dressing room, every time Danny Hodge would walk, every time one of these great performers would walk in the dressing room, I'd watch every damn move that they did. I'd watch how they walked in. I'd watch how they went to locker to shake guys in. I watched how they opened their back. I watched how they put their gear on. I watched how they walked to the ring. I watched every little detail that I could possibly watch on these guys who were stars and guys who weren't stars. I want to know why they didn't make it and why these other guys made it. And I'd analyze that at nighttime. Okay, this is what you're doing wrong. I mean, you got to learn from all those guys, but you show them respect. Sooner or later, they're going to show you respect and start helping you. And I was just so blessed with that skill that I just attracted a lot of people wanting to help me, and I'm blessed for it.
I think it's wild that you guys did all this back then with no cell phones, no internet, but you still had, people knew each other all around the world, and you still had, people sending you to these different territories and going to bat for you with no phones or internet. I think that's pretty wild, really, to think about.
Well, we've just been blessed, and to sit back here and tell these stories, it gets your memories going, stuff about you hadn't thought about in years. And then it's like you was talking Rip and Sweet. Well, hell, from the wrestling magazines, but I'm a kid. They were the stars of Mid-Atlantic at that time. And hell, I thought everybody knew that. So hell, I'd memorized every wrestling magazine there was. I didn't know some of the stuff was 6-month-old that was in there, a year old or whatever.
Yeah.
And Fuller wouldn't put anything in there because he would show angles and stuff like that. Every place was different. Everybody's got these great stories. And then when you mention somebody's name, oh, I remember that guy. Yeah, I remember this guy. Yeah, I remember that angle. And then we're just special people that even though we're sort of nutty because we're addicted,
sort of nutty,
addicted to pro wrestling. Well, it's better, but I can't think of anything better in the world to be addicted to. So what the hell, right?
Yeah.
So
when you said you went to the Carolinas, was that Mid-Atlantic?
Well, it was Mid-Atlantic at the time, yeah. It wasn't quite, I forgot what it was called. But Jim Crockett Promotions, what it was called at that time.
But even though you had the problems in Florida with the arm and the sling, you still had a lengthy run in Florida, right? Like weren't you?
Oh yeah, well, the great thing about it is Jack and I, this is like I told you earlier, Jack and I at an early age decided we weren't really going to be a tag team. We were going to go after our individual goals, and Jack was in process of being built, but as Rip can tell you, and anybody that's when you got a guy up above, you got to have somebody that can be the foil for him. And I was a little brother. I was that guy, and I made more money going around the country putting guys over, getting them ready for Jack than I possibly could have made on my own. But we'd made that pact, we're going to both achieve our goals, and it would stay separate. But, the Mid-Atlantic territory, Jim Crocker promotion territory was so strong and so good, and they were built off a tag team. Florida, not so much tag team as they were single. But every once in a while, we started, God bless the Funk. God bless Terry Funk, that just passed away, too. But, the Funk brothers were in Florida, so they were picking on my brother. Of course, my brother needs somebody to watch his back. So who are they going to bring in? They're going to bring his brother in. So you got that natural rivalry right there. 2 Okies, 2 Texans, 2 Indians, and 2 Cowboys. And, the rest is it, all 4 athletes. And Terry and I, up until the time he passed, we would talk almost bi-weekly. And we'd start sharing our stories or memories, about, the old days there. And I asked him, Terry, why do you think it was that Funk Brisco thing just worked to a T? I mean, we didn't have to be in a territory. They just found to send a tape in. 4 of us go in, and we'd sell the damn arenas out. And we were 4 foreigners coming into another territory. I said, Terry, what do you think made that territory work? He said, Gerald, let me tell you, that old Terry Funk voice, you had 4 great athletes out there, and none of us had an ego with each other. We all trusted each other inside the ring. So one night you guys might get the 90%, and the next night you guys turn around and give us the 90%. We always knew that whatever we gave you guys, we would get back in return, and you guys felt the same way. But it was 4 guys without egos, as Terry would say, that were so cooperative and trusted and respected each other that you could do anything in the ring, and you wasn't worried about getting your stuff in.
How long did you feud basically with the Funks down
20
there?
Years.
How long?
And, about over 20 years.
Did you go? That's what I was going to ask. Were you feuding in other territories as well?
And every territory there was.
Everywhere you went with the NWA?
Every territory in the NWA that we went, we feuded, including Japan, Australia, and Puerto Rico, and a bunch of other countries there. But it was just one of those things, like Terry said, you had 4 guys out there, all 4 college athletes. All 4 guys could go a little bit, and all 4 guys had a unique personality. And it was just a damn son called me. Don't he know I'm busy with Rip Rogers? So anyway, I just told him I'd call him later. So
Wes doing okay?
Yeah, Wes is doing great. But Terry, I love Terry. We went on, but to answer your question, of course, the Funks would start picking on Jack, so they'd fly me down here to Carolina or to Florida to help my brother out. And then they'd come up to Carolina. I was the #1 babyface up there for a while, and they'd start picking on me. And of course, Crocker would fly Jack up there to help me out. So that's how the tag team really started. We didn't set out to be a tag team. It kind of just morphed into that. Then after Jack won his heavyweight title, and I won my junior heavyweight title, we started talking, well, let's team up, and go. We'd never been world tag team champion. We'd won all the local tag team champions around the U.S. So let's go after it. And that was in Carolina. And we had 2 of the greatest foils you could ever have in Ricky Steamboat and Jay Youngblood. So we went up there and kind of finished our career off up there with Ricky and Jay and winning that title. We told everybody what we were coming up there for, and I think that's what made that angle work, because we were so honest with each other. We won every title we could possibly win, but we've never won this. We're up there. We know the rules. We're not going to break the rules, but we're going to bend the rules. So that allowed us to work a heel turn there, which the people, you had 2 of the best baby faces Carolina had ever had turning heel on 2 of their top baby faces there. And it was a heated rivalry that lasted over a year and a half there. But it was so much fun working with Ricky and Steamboat, Jay Young. Jay Youngblood doesn't get the credit he deserved for being a great competitor like he was. He carried that team a lot of times, when Ricky wasn't feeling good. And what a great wrestling family, that he came from too.
That was actually one of our fans' questions was about your heel turn. whose idea was that? Was it yours or was it
It was Ricky and I and Jack. We were coming back from Raleigh, North Carolina. Ricky and Jay had just finished their angle with Sergeant Slaughter and Don Kernoodle, and broke every damn record in existence in Carolina. I mean, just shattered them. And they didn't have anybody to work with. They'd already gone through the Anderson brothers. They'd already gone through all these other tag teams up there. So we started this bullshit. Hey, how about us turning heel on you? And Ricky said, that'd be great. Would you guys do that? And yeah, we'd love to do it. Get a final run there. So we'd already given our due date, our notice. We're going to leave it because Jack was just wanted to kind of fill it in time and get his retirement in the right way. So we'd already given that. So we went to talk to Jimmy Crockett. And it took us about 2 months to talk Jimmy Crockett into letting us turn, because Jimmy, as Rick can tell you, Jimmy was running. Carolina was running 3 towns a night, and they needed baby faces. Heels, they had plenty of heels, but they needed baby faces. And of course, Jack and I were considered the top baby face team. So, Crockett didn't want to lose that baby face, and so we had to beg him. And finally, one day, Jack said, well, Jimmy, I'm leaving anyway, so you might as well let me leave on my terms so I can come back and forth for you. And so finally, Jimmy acquiesced and said, okay, you guys can do it, but I don't want you being a Rip Hawk, or I don't want you being a Anderson or a Rip Hawk or Sweet Hansen heels. I want you guys being you guys heels. Work the way you guys work with the Funk, because he had seen us in Amarillo working with the Funk. That was great too. Fox would come to Florida, they were the heels. We go out to Texas, and we were the heels out there. We just reverse role. And it was so funny. Gordon would commentate down here, and out there they'd have their commentator. So he'd slant them towards their baby faces. And once again, it goes to commentary. But we broke that tournament with Ricky and Jay, that angle with Ricky and Jay, and we started shattering all their record with Sarge and Don Kernoodle there. But it was a blast, and it was what a great way to win that title with your brother and to finish up your wrestling career.
Did the fans buy it?
This sounds strange as hell, but Jack was 41 years old. He considered himself old and losing a step, and he didn't want. That's the type of performer he was. He didn't want to be in wrestling if he wasn't Jack Brisco of old. Right. But he was 41. He said, "I'm too old." He said, "I'm losing my timing and all that stuff." He said, "I don't want to go out there and be one of those old timers that we used to talk about. Why is he still coming around? Why is he taking the spot of a younger guy?" Jack wasn't going to allow that to happen to himself, and he didn't. Once he quit, and he was gone.
Did the fans buy it? Did they turn on you?
Oh yeah, they hated us. I mean, it was that, and Rip can tell you, it's that heat that you work for, in a match all night long to get that heat where it's a quiet heat. It's that pissed off heat that that can explode at any point. We'd build them right to that point of explosion, then let them wait another week for it. That was a great thing about weekly shows back in those days. We could build that right to that crescendo where they're ready to come to the ring, and boom, it's over with. You're back in the dressing room. Damn it, tickets are on sale next week. Just those simple little things like that. And like I said, we never were really a rule breaker where we just bend the hell out. We'd wait till 4 to break. We'd push a referee and make Sonny Fargo. He's, man, you guys don't heal at all, but you guys get so much heat on me. I think I'm gonna have to fight my way out of here every night. But you guys aren't doing anything wrong. He said, I don't understand it. I said, Fargo, you're one of the best heels in the business. Your family, and you're asking us. Yeah, I said, we learned from you guys.
So were you guys ever in the same territory together?
No.
Didn't know if you ever crossed paths.
I think we crossed paths, yeah.
He was busy being a big star. I was trying to not be a goof, I was trying to.
Well, you could have still been around him somewhere, like in the same territory.
I think you were in Florida for a little bit when I probably come down for a shot or two.
I was working for Wahoo in 85, because when Crockett took over and as soon as Dusty became boss.
Oh, we just left there then. We just left there, I guess.
I had about 3 months of loser leave towns with Tommy Rich everywhere. and then I went down to work for Wahoo. And then I was there for like 5 months. And then remember when he was running the super shows, Dusty would come in off the cable.
Yeah.
We sold out Miami, of course. And I was working with Bugsy McGraw. And of course, Dusty Book and everybody there, they all had the double color, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Well, they're giving him a steak match. So I gave him a goddamn spaghetti match and did nothing but comedy and stole the show. And Chief loved it. And the next time we had the show down there, Wahoo had me off I said, Wahoo, I'm not booked on the big show in Miami. He said, well, that wasn't me. That was Dusty. So I said, oh, okay, I got it. I said, well, I'm leaving. Fuck you. I'm out of here. He goes, you can't do that. I said, Chief, you walked 6 in a row territories and you told me that. He said, well, just please, I will pay you. I'll meet you in Key West the next day and we'll forget all about it. I said, Chief, I'll be loading my van. I'll be out of here in 2 fucking hours. And stupid me, that's what I did.
Wow.
So I got the dumbass award. But I hate shit like that.
I do too. That's part of our business too that we all despise, and conveniently a lot of times we leave those parts out of our stories, which is they're a vital part of the whole picture though.
Right. But no matter what,
I got to ask you a question. I mean, the old adage, you're in a loser leave town match. All of a sudden, you drive up and with a U-Haul attached to the back of your car. There,
who's losing?
Yeah, I used to crack. I remember sitting on and I forgot who was having a loser leave town. Tim Woods versus somebody. And the guy pulls up in a damn U-Haul, and everybody, all the fans, well, I guess he's the one losing the match tonight. He got the U-Haul on the back of his car.
Yeah, I remember hearing the story about that, and I tried to get the other guy to do it as a rib.
Yeah.
Like the Babyface to grab.
Yeah.
I remember working with Piper. I had a loser leave town in Portland, and I just beat him the week before. Piper gave the goodbye speech. I love you all. If I don't see you again, blah, blah, blah. Then he went out there and beat me. It was awesome.
Yeah.
I was in for like 2 weeks and a day. So I got 3 Portlands in there.
Wow.
And people, it just drove. That was Buddy Rose's idea, right?
Yeah.
So that was great. And the people, they bought it hook, line, and sinker. It was awesome.
I know Rip had some questions. I know eventually then you ended up in Georgia. Rip was talking about some Georgia wrestling things. You ended up getting into, did you own some of Georgia? Is that how that went down?
Yeah, I got really, really lucky there. Back in those days, if you meant something to a territory and the promoter didn't want to leave you, he would kind of entice you to stand there and kind of offer you a couple of points there, and so I was blessed where I both Florida and Georgia, I was able to acquire some stock. And then, of course, some tragedy. Buddy Coat went down in the airplane crash. I expressed earlier, or told earlier, my relationship with Buddy Coat, Ronnie Reed. So Buddy called me and he said, "Kid, you want to buy my stock?" He said, "I need the money." I said, "Well, I hate to do it like this." He said, "Just give me a fair price for it, and we'll remain friends." So I said, "Well, you tell me what the fair price is." So we negotiated a price, and I bought him out. I bought Tim Woods out. I bought a couple of other guys out. So my brother and I ended up with a pretty good fair share of Georgia along with Florida.
I told you Florida and Georgia, didn't I, before we went on here? So got that right just from thinking I knew something. A lot of times I think I know something. I don't know shit. But in this particular one,
I
got it right.
Could I ask you just to pull up your microphone just a little bit for me on the side? If you don't, there, thank you.
Yeah.
Just was just falling down a little bit. So when the Georgia thing happened, then is that when you were talking about, like when Vince started showing up? Was that early, late, or how did?
I was working for Ron Fuller in late 1984, and all of a sudden we'd work Dothan TV in the morning. Then we would go to the hotel for so many hours. Then we would go to the Dothan Farm Center that night. All of a sudden, at 6:05, or turn on WTBS. Instead of Gordon Soley, there's Vince Kennedy McMahon. I go, what the hell is going on? All of a sudden, they had the big takeover, whatever, where if you could explain all this, Coach, because only anything anybody else tells, it's changed. You know how wrestlers by the end of the room, it's completely different. Here's somebody that can explain everything about this and how you got a 25-year, 35, 70-year run.
And he said in the beginning he's telling the truth on this show today too. So
who, me or Coach?
Coach did. So
yeah,
he can tell us the true story of what went down at that time.
Well, you know, there's so much that goes through it. You know, everybody's been begging me to write a book on the damn thing, and probably I should sometime down the line there. But you know, I got to tell you the condensed version because
that's fine.
There's so much backstory to the story there, and you know, it's my story, and people can poke holes in it all they want to, but you know, I was there, as the saying goes. I know how it went down, and so you know, I mean, who did? We're all having trouble with Ole, you know, and you know, getting our fair share of profits of Georgia Championship Wrestling. We'd bought in. We didn't even know Ole, and that's really what saved us. And we didn't know Ole was a owner of Georgia Championship. We had no clue on that, and that's how tight knit the stories were back in those days, and the communication was. And he had bought his from Bill Watts, and we didn't know about it. But that's, like I say, and I'll get into it. That's what saved us on the sell. Because when in our bylaws, if you sell a part of your stock, if you sell your stock, it's got to be offered to existing stockholders to begin with. You can't just sell it to some outsider, you know, without any of the stockholders knowing.
Okay.
Well, Bill Watts worked a deal with Ole and sold his stock, you know, under the table that nobody knew anything about except Bill, Jim Barnett, and Ole. Of course, they weren't telling anybody. And so we kept wondering, why is Ole getting all this power? And number one, we always respected the system of professional wrestling. You know, there's a booker, there's an owner, and all that. And, you know, you respect that. So you really, you know, I really didn't get into a little why Ole was able to do this until. So we were unhappy with our share of the income there. And we had several meetings down with Atlanta with Jim and with Ole, and we never got anything. So we just decided, hey man, it's time to move on. You know, we had our body shop was rolling, it was cranking out. That's one thing my brother and I always did. We always knew the business wasn't going to be strong every month out of the year. So we bought a lot of real estate in Florida. Started the body shop, which lasted over 40 years, and built it up to being the biggest one in the state. And so we had income, so we wasn't really worried about, you know, what was going to happen after we stepped out of the ring. And Jack, like I said, Jack was 41. He was totally ready to get out of the business. He had had that three-year run as champion, whatever length of run it was as champion, and was basically burned out. And we just had that run with Ricky and Jay up there where we were working pretty steady up there. And he was worn out. His body was getting worn out. And I was just having kids, and I was wanting to spend some time at home with my kids too. And I knew I had the body shop to kind of pay my bills, and I didn't have to worry about it too much. So we're like, okay, let's sell. So we went around. We offered the stock to everybody that we could think that could have the Murnick. So Joe Murnick, Elliot Murnick, Carl Murnick out of Raleigh, out of Mid-Atlantic, Jimmy Crockett, Davy Crockett, Jackie Crockett, Jim Barnett, Eddie Graham. Nobody wanted to buy. Well, we found out later that when we started negotiating the price, of course, the first guy they would call would be Ole. And Ole would say, hey, you don't want to buy that stock. They're trying to rip you off, you know. And a few months from now this is another thing. And a few months from now, it won't be worth nothing. So he was trying to take that stock and make it worthless, so all the other stockholders will get out of the company, and you know he could buy it all for pennies on the dollar. But no, two Indians are smarter than that. You're not going to work that out. So we'd done going through, and everybody had called Ole, and we were told we're going to call Ole. So, and we knew what Ole would tell them. Ole would undervalue the stock. So finally, Roddy Piper, we mentioned Hot Rod, a dear friend of all of ours, and a guy I love to death, man, who was my best friend on the road. He had gotten hurt in Madison Square Garden. He got his fingers. He went to get a table, and the table wasn't prepared right, and it slit his inside of his finger. We'd heard he was going to lose his fingers, and so we were doing TV at Crockett office there on the Moorhead Street or whatever street it was, Dunwoody or whatever the name of the street was, doing promos there. So Jack sees Jimmy. He said, "Jimmy, you hear Hot Rod got hurt last night?" "Yeah, I did." "I hear he's going to lose his fingers." "Well, I've heard that too." He said, "Well, hell, why don't we call Vince McMahon and find out the truth on this? Because everybody wants to know here doing promos." "I'm not calling that bastard. I'm not calling it." Jack said, "Well, I'll call him, you know." And so Jack goes into Jimmy's office, calls Vince McMahon from Jimmy Crockett's telephone. And so while he's on the telephone, he finds out, of course, Piper's going to be okay, and they got a specialist for him. You know, he's going to not going to lose his fingers and all that stuff. And Jack said, "Thank you, Vince." And Vince said, "Hey, Jack," he said, "I got something to ask you." He said, "You told me where you were, so I know you can't answer. So just say yes or no." He said, "Are you guys interested in talking to me about your stock?" And Jack said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Okay, well, when you get out of that office and you get home, give me a call and we'll talk. We'll try to negotiate something." So we finished our promos up. We left the Crockett office, went to Jack's apartment, and first call we called was Vince McMahon. And we worked out a meeting where we worked out some figures where we're solid enough where we're going to have a meeting. And as you know, Rip, and anybody that's familiar with office, keeping anything secret in our business is just, next to impossible. But, you're saying you were sitting up there in Tennessee right next to Georgia. You guys didn't hear a thing about it. Fuller's and that territory were real tight. So if anybody's going to hear anything, it's going to be you guys, But nobody knew nothing about it because we were keeping it, because it's just Jack and I on our end, and only Vince on his end were the only three guys that knew anything about it. So we worked out the deal, and we had all of our meetings. And Vince flew to Atlanta. Vince and Linda flew to Atlanta 3 or 4 times. We made a deal. It was a 15-hour day that last day, a 15-hour negotiating deal. And man, we're facing an army of lawyers from New York, along with Vince McMahon and Linda McMahon. And like I said, all their army of attorneys sitting in this big attorney's office with one of those big conference tables, that you see on the movies. And we finally got it figured out and everything, and we finally secured the sale, and boom, now it's Vince's issue. It's not our issue anymore. So Jack and I basically quit and came back down to Florida and just started managing and running the body shop down here. And the next thing you know, Vince McMahon's on Georgia Championship Wrestling.
Wow.
That's the condensed version.
What a story.
So then they wouldn't have been majority owners then, right? Or
well, we had to get the majority. We had to get 51% to approve the sale. So
okay.
Old Paul, I don't know if Rip ever knew him, but old Paul Jones, the owner, yep. The old guy. Uh-huh. Paul was an amateur wrestler up in Indiana or somewhere like that. So he had a ton of respect for Jack and I, because we were amateur wrestlers too. And his lovely wife there, she loved us both because we were nice young, Oklahoma country boys, and kind of reminded her of Paul when he was a young guy. And so we had her on our side, and then we had to get Jim Oates, who was Jim Barnett's partner at the time, and we had to get him, and he wasn't really 100% in favor of it in the beginning. And I've heard him on an interview. I think Conrad Thompson did an interview with him, where there was all types of rumors. Well, Brisco did do it, somebody else did, but Jim Oates said, "No, Gerald Brisco's the one that talked me into doing it," and he based all of his facts on facts instead of just hearsay and all that stuff. But getting back to only getting that stock, like I said, one of the main things that you had to do as a stockholder, if you wanted to get rid of your stock, was offer it to somebody else. We basically offered it to Ole, but we gave him an inflated price on purpose because he knew we'd turn it down. So we covered our base on that. But when Ole bought his share, when Ole sued us because it was an illegal sale because we hadn't offered the stock to anybody else, we had him under oath where he had to admit that we did offer him the stock to buy. So, and then it was brought up, well, Ole, how did you get your stock? Nobody knew that you were a stockholder. Well, I bought it from Bill Watt. Well, did Bill offer it to anybody else before he sold it? No, he didn't. Okay, well, case dropped. You know, you
So
lost on technicality like that.
it's wild. So when you were having the big meetings with Vince, and the lawyers and everybody, I mean, only knew then, right? That was going
No,
on.
nobody knew.
He didn't
Nobody
know,
knew.
even though you were trying to
Nobody.
get majority.
No, nobody knew we were talking to Vince. All he thought we were doing is going around talking to wrestlers and they'd be promoters, you know.
Okay. So when you were trying to get other people, you weren't really trying to get Ole anymore. Or you didn't even.
Oh,
He
we
didn't,
offered it to Ole right off the bat. I think
right,
Jack
right, right.
offered the stock in Baltimore, Maryland one night. He was up there, and we'd come. It was a quarterly time, and hey, Ole, we're gonna make it in quarter. Oh, and Ole goes, oh no, Jack, you know, it costing us this and that and that and that, you know, and all this, and we're not making any money, you know, but we're losing money. You know, we're going to have a reverse dividend. Jack said, well, if there's going to be a reverse dividend, looks like there's going to be some changes made up there too. And so Jack offered his stock to Ole then, and that was brought up. So if we hadn't have done that, then Vince might not ever got Georgia Championship Wrestling. But we had an attorney that studied our bylaws and knew enough about. We tried to do a takeover where I was going to come in. I was going to take Ole's place and run Georgia Championship Wrestling. And so we called a big stockholder meeting. Also in the stockholder, and that's where people in business they're so bright. You know, we just happen if you don't have the right counseling and the right deal, because we didn't know any of this stuff. That you 9 times out of 10 you got to listen to those lawyers. They make that big money for a reason. But the lawyers, you know, they come in. We didn't state a purpose on why we called a special stockholders meeting, and you got to call. You got to give a reason why. Well, we knew if we put on there, you know, we'll call a meeting because of a potential sale of stock, then nobody would want to attend the meeting. So we screwed up like that. That was really our only screw up, and we did screw up big time on that because we flew up there on our dime to do the takeover, but we couldn't have the meeting because we hadn't had the right proper, you know, procedure on calling them a special meeting like that.
Nice. Wow. So I know we've kept you on here a while, but I can't quite stop yet. I hope you have a little bit more time.
A couple of more minutes, Alice.
So when you went back then to Florida and you know you sold and you went back to Florida, then obviously you got back in WWE for 35 years or whatever. So WWF at the time. So did Vince just call you then and say, "Hey, come join me"?
No. Here's what happened there. We were down there happy. You know, I said I just had Wes was just born. He was about a year old at the time, and our body shop was just clicking. Man, we went from like 15 employees up to like 35 employees. I mean, that shop was just clicking. It was taking 24/7 involvement there. We had no really desire to get back in the business, but something happened. One of the tag teams up there got hurt, and they needed somebody to work with the Samoans. And George Scott was the booker at the time, and George loved us, and George was a good friend of ours. So George told Vince about us, and he said, "Well, call him." He said, "Vince," he said, "I know if I call them, they'll give me some rhyme reason why they don't come. But why don't you call them? And you got that convincing sales pitch that you can talk." So Vince picked the phone, called me. He knew he couldn't call Jack because Jack wasn't ready to go back. So I told Jack, and Jack said, as long as it's part time, I'll go, but I'm not going to go full time up there because that was the old horror stories. These guys working 125 days in a row, you know, which was actually going on. Jack said, I've done that when I was champion. I don't want to do it again at my age. I said, okay, I'll make that. So I called Vince back. I said, Jack agreed to do it under these circumstances that we're doing it part time. And he said, okay. He said, that sounds great to me. So we got up there. Of course, we worked with Dickie Murdoch and Adrian Donis, two of the greatest workers in the world. Couldn't have been paired with anybody any better than that. And we started, you know, of course, you can't have quality matches with those two guys. You shouldn't be in the business to begin with. So we're tearing it up every night, you know. So George came up to us, you know, we were kind of thinking about putting the titles on you guys and giving you a run, kind of like you did in Mid-Atlantic with Ricky and Jay, only with Mike Rotundo and Barry Windham. And Jack looked at me. He said, I don't know about you, but I can't keep up with those two young guys. He said, I don't want to do it. So Jack refused to do it. So that's when Jack just got cold one day in New Jersey, a big blizzard. we're standing at the airport. Jack pointed up. See that airplane going south? And I said, yes. He said, I'm going to be on the next one. I quit. I said, no. He said, I quit. We're on the way to Philly. He turned around, walked back in the airport, got on the airplane, and he never got home here in Odessa, took his watch off, threw it in the damn lake. He said, I'll never wear another watch again as long as I live. And he never did.
Holy shit. That is awesome.
Yeah, that was the famous story about the weather and how and what happened. But that's the exact, pretty much word for word that everybody. I never heard about the watch thing, but the rest of it about the cold weather and whatever. Just say no. I'm done. I'm out.
I'm out.
And that was
gone.
It. It don't
Jack, you'll be back. You'll be back. No, I won't either. one of the few guys that quit the business.
Wow.
And he just say he was happy running the body shop, and our body shop continued to do well. So he had no words.
Wow. So then obviously you had a great run WWE and then backstage and recruiter and everything else you did, you know.
Yeah, well, let me finish. I'll go ahead and
sorry.
finish. I'm sorry. I
go.
dropped out there. So
we
worked at
Jack.
Jack quit, and he, is there. So I was happy. Wes was, like I said, a year or so old, and so I was remodeling my house, and I, raising a kid, and running the body shop and running some real estate interests that we had down here. So one day I get this call, and it's Vince. And oh man, what you want this time? So he called me. He said, Gerald, he said, I'm getting ready to I'm trying to get into the South, but I'm having a lot of problems securing the buildings. He said, Jim Barnett told me that you were good friends with a lot of the building managers down there. That's one thing, because I was college educated, and I guess I look decent. That every time we go to one of these buildings, whether it be the Crockett's or Graham or Barnett, they would always take me to the building manager and introduce me, kind of show and tell guy. Well, this guy from Oklahoma State University, he's one of our top guys, blah, blah, blah. So I always formed a great relationship with the building manager. So I knew a lot of these guys. And it was just starting out today where these corporate, like Spectrum Incorporated, were taking over a lot of buildings. They go in and get the management rights of a lot of these buildings. So if you got in with one of them, you could usually get in with the whole corporation, which managed probably 15 buildings. Here in the South, they had one, and in the North they had another one, and all that stuff. So I was in touch with the one in the South, so I had a good relationship with all the building managers. So, make a long story short, Vince called me. He said, I'm having trouble getting in a lot of these buildings. Jim thinks you can help me. Do you want that job? So that's basically how I started for Vince. And I said, I'll do it if I can have the promotional rights to the town. He said, you got them. So I started doing that, and I ended up, I was just supposed to do Georgia and Carolinas. I ended up with 9 states and like 80 some odd markets around that I was promoting on the side for Vince. So it was a great deal for me. And then they started changing the pay procedure on how, because we started making too much money because business was so good. They book a car there and they'd sell out automatically with Hogan and Piper and those guys like that. So they changed it. So when they changed it, I called Vince. I said, Vince, my money shrunk down to hardly nothing. I don't want to be on the road anymore. And he said, well, how about you come up and work in the office with me? I said, okay, but I'm not moving to Connecticut. I made that rule right off the bat. I wasn't going to move up north. I said, people in the north move down here to Florida. Us Florida people don't move up to Connecticut there. And so that probably prevented me from really getting promoted to probably what I could have done up here, but I didn't care because I was home in Florida. So, but I loved it, and Vince was a great guy to work for, and I had, we have our disagreements, we had our issues. And Vince was one of those type of guys, or if he disagreed with you, he'd tell you why he disagreed with you, and if he agreed with you, he would take your deal and make it that much better with his knowledge and everything. I had a great relationship with him. I enjoyed 36 years of great work. Not all 36 years was continuous great time, but the majority of it, I wouldn't take it back for nothing.
I was asking Rip before the show if he thought you guys were, basically friends. You're on air together all the time. You worked there 36 years. I just didn't know if I would assume you would have a different relationship with Vince than the average person that shows up.
I had a friendship relationship with Vince, I think, and then as my positions changed or something, sometimes it was real, real kind of sticky on who was right and who was wrong. And because I'm a stubborn guy, he told me one time, Brisco, you're the most stubborn guy I ever met in my life. I said, well, you ought to introduce yourself to each other. But I could talk to him like that, and he could talk to me like the same way, and we had that respect for each other. Once again, it boils down to respect for each other, and and like I said, it wasn't all roses. I had some tough times up there, and we went through some tough times, and in the mid-90s, the territory about ready to fold. And Pat had to resign over some issues there, and I was thrust into that position where Pat was at, and then it was kind of touch and go. We were losing talent. The WCW, that's when Turner started printing that printing press with money and buying our guys up. We're losing guys, and I had to figure out why we're losing guys and what we could do to retain the guys, and had several meetings with some of the top guys, and we worked out a system that I presented to Vince, and Vince bought it, and he started keeping his guys because he started giving these guys guaranteed after that. It was a tough time, but the tough time, then all of a sudden, man, that business started to pop, and man, there was nothing like there was nothing like being in a territory when it goes from the bottom to when it starts popping. Man, your attitude, that locker room, and everybody walking in and out of the building is just a totally different presence about it when a territory's popping. And when it's popping, you can feel it right off the bat, right, Rip? I mean, there's no feeling like it, man. No, you walk out there and there's 15,000, 16,000 screaming fans waiting on you. It's awesome.
You can't wait to get up in the morning, go to the gym, eat right, and get to that building, because you're going to have such a great
energy.
time. It's going to be electric. You're going to find so many hot bitches. It's going, oh, hell yeah. You're just on an emotional high. Every day is a holiday is what it is.
Exactly. You're exactly right.
And you just can't wait for the next day. It's so much fun. And a normal person not in the business, they have no idea what you're talking about. But guys that have seen it, experienced, been there, it's just like when you got bad times, you're just thinking about this stuff of how it was, and you just walk around with a shit-eating grin on your face, and nobody else can even understand why.
Yeah.
See, I would much rather hear these old stories, but I know if I don't ask you just a couple of these questions that our fans answer, I'm going to get crushed. What was it like being a stooge? You and Pat Patterson with Vince McMahon and the hardcore champion, and did you enjoy being on TV?
I wasn't so much to be on TV. I'm 55 years old during this time, man. Yeah. And, I've had my career, I've had my spotlight, and then be thrust back into it. Man, that adrenaline starts flowing back to all those things that Rip described, the feeling. I was getting to reacquire those things, becoming more familiar with them. It was so much fun. I enjoyed that student gimmick, and it was really funny in the beginning. We were associates. Everybody respected Pat and I so much they didn't want to call us stooges. And finally, one day, Vince slips up in the meeting and he said, "My stooges." And all of a sudden, he looks up. He just stops in the middle of his delivery. And he said, "Brisco, do you mind being called a stooge?" I said, "I think it's funny as hell. Go for it."
Oh, that's awesome.
So if you listen to Jim Ross, we were always Vince McMahon's associates. And then all of a sudden, when Vince just slipped out of it, my stooges, and everybody kind of got silent in the production meeting room. What's he talking about? And then he said, "Brisco, do you mind?" I said, "Man, I love it. Let's go with it." And Pat hated it. Pat hated it in the beginning. He grew to love it too. But the little hardcore run that I had, that was so much fun. But it was brutal on me too, because I like to tell these people, and Rip can back me up on this. Say, I'm 55 years old. I'm an old man. You're out there against a bunch of guys, the Stone Colds, the Rocks, the Undertakers. They're all thriving for their position. They're all thriving. They work their ass off. And when you get in the ring with them, you better be there with them, or you ain't gonna last long. And I don't blame them. I was the same way. I would wanted to pick it up, but I'm 55 years old. I can't pick it up like those young guys can pick it up. So they expected you to go out there when they didn't care what your age was. They just wanted you to work hard and give it everything you had. That was a tough time on your body and on your mind, because you get, I'm going out there with an Undertaker. If I don't pick it up, or I'm there with Stone Cold, I got to be right there step for step with Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, guys like that. I mean, And obviously we did, because he kept doing it. And we went from being a heel team with Vince to being a babyface team and setting a record ratings on Monday Night Raw. So
that's wild. Were you devastated when Pat Patterson turned on you then?
Oh yeah, no, it was fun. I mean, it was fun because I knew I was going to get. But I only thing I was devastated about when they made my match, an evening gown match.
Oh yeah, I saw some of that. I saw some of those.
And the story of that, I was coaching high school wrestling. Most of my kids were in the high school; they were wrestling at the time. So I was coaching high school wrestling. So when I had to wear that dress, I walk in, and my team was so protective of me. It was unbelievable. If any of these other kids he had to wear a dress, you can see one of my kids going over and addressing the guy up and down. Hey, you don't talk about my coach like that. They took up for me, and I love every one of those kids for it. It was such a blast. But my kids had a rougher time than I did with it, though. I just say, when I walk into the bank, they still call me Mr. Brisco.
Mr. Brisco. Do you talk to Vince anymore?
Yeah, matter of fact, he just had a birthday a couple of weeks ago, 24th, 25th of August, and I called him. We had about a 5-minute conversation, and just bullshit, Cool. I wasn't asking for a job or anything. It's happy birthday, my friend. I got a birthday coming up, and I probably get a call from him. We call them birthdays. Well, if something happens, we'll text each other. Nowadays it's more texting than it is calling. But I called him. I just wanted to talk to him. And when he came back into the company, I called him. I said, I never doubted it. I always thought you'd be around. And I said, congratulations. He said, well, thank you. He said, it's going to be different this time. And man, it's always different with them. Every day is different with them. That was the great challenge about it. I mean, working with him every day. And when you're on the inside with him, you're on the inside. It's everything. You're on the inside with everything, every little minute business detail. He wants advice from me. He wants feedback from all his trusted guys. And that's the one thing I really respect and learn from him, to get that feedback from other guys that you trust and you rely on. Why you have them around if you don't want their feedback? I mean, he didn't agree with me a majority of the time, but he agreed with me a lot of times. And I'm thankful for those times he agreed with me, because he knew I had an opinion, and I always respected that about him.
I like to hear that you gave an opinion. Obviously, you didn't just always say
what if you're there 36 years and you're not giving an opinion, you're not going to be there 36 years. I guarantee you that.
Well, or an opinion that he wants to hear, maybe. I guess.
Yeah. But even if you're giving an opinion he wants to hear, you're not going to make it that long. If you every night, you're right. God damn it, I got to be wrong sometimes.
That's awesome. So, being in that position, I mean, after you start out, kid in Oklahoma, amateur wrestler, and now you made it all the way there for that. I mean, was it ever like a surreal moment? Was that kind of the end goal, or did you think, man, I can't believe I'm still doing this and I made it this far? People always have different answers, I think, with this
every day of my career was a surreal moment. How in the hell, why am I here? That's not, how am I here? But why am I here? Why am I here? And how can I stay here? I don't want to change zip code. I like this zip code, and I don't want to change it, It was more so how I always had, and it's funny, I tell people that, and I learned that setting up the rings. I go back, when I was still in college, and I was driving around there in spring break, setting up the damn rings, the summertime, setting up in that old hot Oklahoma heat. I remember Bob Clay. I don't know if you ever run across the Clay brothers there in Oklahoma. Rip there, Bob and Leonard Clay. They did a co-promotion for Leroy in a lot of the little spot show towns. Well, I was doing a little spot show town, setting up the ring, and every one of those brutal, hot Oklahoma evenings. I'm sitting there, I'm trying to sell tickets, and I have people bitching at me. I want this seat, I want 2 seats, I want 4 seats in a row. I can't give you, how that is. I mean, they're bitching. You got to sell tickets for you hear those people. So all of a sudden, I'm there, and man, I'm sweating. I probably just got through with a damn customer that gave me grief or something. All of a sudden, I see this damn Cadillac come rolling up. And like I said, it's brutal hot. Cadillac pulls up, and when they first started, it was automatic. I see that window roll down, and I feel that cold air coming out of that Cadillac. Man, it feels good. Yeah, hey, kid, how can I get 8 tickets in a row here? And I said, you can't. And he starts bitching at me, and I look in, and it's damn Bob Clay. And I said, oh, so, I said, okay. So the moral of the story was I'm doing it. They trust me so much that they let me do the accounting part of it. So he said, take 35, I believe it's 35%, set it over here and the rest of it over here. So, wow, I got an experience right off the bat before I ever got in the ring that these guys are making 35%. And there's 15 of them on the card, and this guy's making 65%. There's one of him, So I learned the arithmetic of promotion right away. So that was always in the back of my mind, man, that's where I want to be. That's the role I want in this business. And I always worked to obtain that role. And I think that's the reason I was so anal about getting parts of territories, no matter how minute they were. I knew that my minute part of 70% was bigger than the 30% that are being split 15 ways.
I have one more question. I promise we'll let you go. Hulk Hogan. Did you discover Hulk Hogan?
Well, nowadays I don't even know. I mean, I was a part of it. Let me just say that I like to think I was. My brother and I was, and I give most of the credit to Jack because he was more of a rounder type guy than I was. But I give most of the credit to Jack. But yeah, I was a part of the system. I was booker of the territory at the time, Florida Wrestling. And I booked Terry in his first match. I booked Terry in his tryout match, but I hear Terry and I hear some of these other guys tell the story that hell, I wasn't even there, So, well, I don't care. I know the story, and I know I was there, and I know the situation. I booked him for his first matches. I booked him for all for his tryout matches, and with Matsuda. I was there when Matsuda showed him. It takes a man to be in the business. There, he didn't break the ankle, but he severely sprained it where it felt like it was broke. It looked like it was broke.
Yeah, well, we've heard plenty.
I got to give Terry credit, man. 3 weeks later, he was back with those boots strapped up and ready to roll, man. So, guy don't come back like that, especially after he's been injured, and taken advantage of by somebody. They don't come back unless they're serious about getting in the business. When he came back, Jack and I said to each other, man, that guy wants to be in the business. Let's have Matsuda back off a little bit. So we backed off that and just started seeing how he could pick things up. And a guy, to his credit, man, Terry was a hard worker. I mean, Terry worked his ass off to become good. And to break in under Hero Matsuda and Bob Roop and those guys, you better have something between your legs or you're not going to last long. And he lasted, man.
Yep. Well, we've heard plenty of stories of Rip not being at places that he was there too. So it happens.
And some places I don't mind when they leave me out of the story.
Well, Coach, you got anything to plug? Plug your show with JBL and whatever else you got going on.
Yeah, well, I'm doing this show with podcast now, and it's really funny how it started. I started doing some goofy stuff during the pandemic, and we're all sitting here alone at home, and we're people. I don't care, and Rip probably has said this. I hate people. But when you're not around people, you discover, man, you love being around people. And during that pandemic, that made us all realize how much we enjoy being around people, because we're forced to just be around a few people in our life, which we enjoyed. But you enjoy those crowds. I don't care who you are. You no matter how many times you say you hate people. You want to get there. So I'm bored, and so I just the internet. I don't know nothing about this crap, so I just start goofing off one day, and stories according to Brisco. Road stories according. I'd tell Piper stories. I'd tell Hogan stories. I would tell Andre stories, and just the typical stories. Well, you run out of those, and JBL is doing the same thing on his end up wherever he's living, and and he starts to run out. And I hired JBL in the business. So he called me one day and he said, "Hey, man, you're doing your thing. I'm doing my thing. And you kind of slow down with it." He said, "How about we do something together? Call this Stories with Brisco and Bradshaw. As long as Brisco's first, I'll do it there for you." So we come up with that. We started doing this. And 2.5 years later, we're still rolling, man. We're having fun doing it. I think that's what comes across, because we're having fun. And the stories we're getting, are from the original guys that created the story. They're not second or third hand-me-down stories. They're the original stories from the guys who created the stories. And I think that's what sets it apart from anything else. We're not telling rumors and innuendos, as they say. We're telling a cold hard fact from the guy who lived the story. You know, the story about Teddy Long driving in a blizzard and Ron Simmons stopped to get out and take a piss, him and JBL. And JBL gets in the car. Teddy takes off, leaves Ron standing there with his Yankee in his hand, taking a piss, and as the tail lights disappeared into the blizzard. And then Teddy Long having to turn around and go back and pick up a Ron Simmons who's now frozen to death and pissed off. Hearing Teddy Long's version of the story, then turn around and hearing Ron Simmons' version of the story. It's great. We're having a good time doing it. So Brisco's the story, stories according to Brisco and Bradshaw. Get on YouTube or any place that you get your podcast. You can pick us up just like you can pick up this Rip Rogers podcast. You guys do a great job, man. I'm enjoying the hell out of it. I've talked longer on this damn thing than I have any other podcast, man. I appreciate and I respect Mr. Rogers there so much for what he's done.
Wow.
Anything to add there, Rip?
As Nick Gould would say, this is the greatest show in many, many months. That's all you can say. And from whether it be 106 North Albany, the tonight in the Omni, or wherever we're at, it was a pleasure to have you on here, Coach. I'm like a little kid, and whenever I do these podcasts, no matter how good, bad, or ugly they are, it's the greatest time that day of me living on this earth.
I'll tell you that we're blessed with the technology that's coming for us as it has, man. I mean, just every day, something new comes out. But I want to leave you with one last little quote here, and we'll go off into the sun. So long from the Sunshine State.
Thank you, Mr. Soley. And then I'll sign it just like they did.
That's awesome.
Thanks, Coach.
Thank you, sir. I really appreciate it. I know you're doing it for Rip, like everybody tells me, but really appreciate you coming on here today and spending a couple hours with us.
I had a blast. Anytime I see Rip, I get a smile on my face, man. And the kids that he's helped train are just so blessed to be 10, 15 years from now. Hey, Rip Rogers trained me. Man, that'll last forever, man. That's a lifetime, and that's a lifetime of thanks to the guy who the flip-flops and flies are important in this business nowadays. They weren't so much in my day, but nowadays they're important for that. That's beyond Rip Rogers, and that's beyond Gerald Brisco. But the psychology and the respect that he teaches these young men for the business and women about the business is lasting forever, and that part of our business will never change. The flip-flops and flies will change, but the tradition and the respect will never change. And guys like Rip Rogers who are teaching these kids nowadays, he's just expanding what we grew up on and what business that we grew to love. And there's nobody like him, and take advantage of him every damn day that you can. Thank you, Rip.
Nothing I teach is original. It's everything with stars like you have handed down to somebody else. They've handed down to me. You taught me what to do, but mostly you taught me of what not to do to be a professional wrestler, what it means, how to protect your opponent at all times. And I'd rather hurt myself than hurt you. And I just want it done right. In my opinion, what's right. Of course, we all got belly buttons. But anything that I teach, I stand by it. So thanks for being on here, Coach. I'm starting to tear up, so I'm going to get the hell off here.
Thank you, guys. Have a great weekend.
I said, are you ready? I got my dots on, my polka dots. Get your popcorn, get your Coke, get ready, get excited, because look what's coming up now.